Hello, whoever's here. Oh, Barb, I'm glad you came back. Elaine's back. Oh, good. Yay. Thanks for sticking with me. Elaine, I was just saying how I'm having really challenging issues with technology this week. Anyway, I decided I'm going to do day 2 today because it's just so important that to really try to get this idea. Yes. Oh, thank you. Yeah, really eating healthy food. Yeah, it's really, really important. It's the right question to ask. It does take me a little while to teach it to my clients. But I'm really trying to separate between what is truly healthy, highly nutritious foods without a doubt, and what are processed, non-nutritious food-like substances that are packaged and promoted as healthy. So hopefully over these few days, you can get a really good idea of it. I can't answer it in one sentence, but the best quick summary I have for it is look for whole, real, highly nutritious foods, unambiguously highly nutritious. If it's something that has been broken down into flour, broken down into juice, it was a whole food and then it was broken down, that's processing. It doesn't just mean something that has a bunch of things added to it. It is also, did you break down the food in order to basically make it sweeter and make it easier to eat, which our brain thinks is a great idea. Both of those seem like a great idea. It's just way too much of our diet now is broken down, highly processed. And that is turning out to be terrible for our health and terrible for our weight. It's also interesting, I'll talk more about this tomorrow, how those tend to be the things we feel like we love. Like, I love those things. And that's because our body thinks this is a great idea. It's a great idea to get my calories as fast and as cheap as possible. Well, it's not a great idea for our weight or our blood pressure or our blood sugar or those chronic diseases of aging. It's a great idea for survival if we live in a low nutrition environment. So that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. I'm so glad you guys are here. Today, I'm talking about eat less is terrible weight loss advice. I feel like we've all heard this. Dieting is not a good idea. Weight loss diets do not work for sustainable weight loss. And yet, it's still an idea that's in our head anyway. It's still what our doctors tend to tell us. It's still what the articles tell us, what dietitians and nutritionists tell us. So I really want to arm you with a better understanding of why is this terrible advice and what do we need to do instead, okay? So thanks for coming back. I really appreciate your sincerity. Like, there's so much information out there. Why would you take time trying to learn? Well, how is healthy eating actually different? All right, so eat less is terrible advice for living healthfully slender. So I talked about this, I think, on Monday. UCLA researchers looked at, well, how often do weight loss diets produce weight loss that lasts? That if we look at them 2 or 3 years later, they still have the weight loss. And it was almost never. It almost never seems to work. So they concluded actually dieting is the best predictor of weight gain over time. If you diet this year, we can predict that you will gain even more weight down the road. So that's a very disheartening, right? They were trying to study, should Medicare be investing in weight loss diet approaches? And the conclusion was no. They don't know. It's partly because they're too bought into this. They're too bought into our food environment. There is tremendous money invested in keeping us bought into our food environment, what's profitable for the food industry. And there's tremendous investment in this idea that all we have to do is eat less. So the idea is I just have to, it's a calories in, calories out kind of thing, right? There's this principle of thermodynamics that says calories in have to equal calories out. But our bodies, what I came to realize, because I always bought into this, it made sense. And it's what my doctors say, and it's what nutritionists say, and it's what all the articles say. But our body is not just following principles of physics. Our bodies are designed to protect our survival, right? So they have these intricately balanced biological systems to protect survival. So our bodies evolved very well over the years to protect against starvation, right? So if I start exercising a lot more, burning more calories, or if I start eating significantly less, ingesting less calories, my body might drop weight initially. But then my body has ways of defending against starvation. So we get more hunger hormones in our system. We get more cortisol in our system. So we're more sleepless. We have more time to go look for food. It changes how our insulin functions. So we start storing excess fat for the future. So this is a very interesting thing that evolved in human history, in human biology, and in the biology of other animals, where we can store excess fat to be able to live off it later. That's what that's for, right? So our metabolism even slows down. We burn the most calories when we're sleeping or during various processes, not by doing exercise, right? So only 30% of the calories we burn is from exercise. Most is what we burn when we're sleeping, at rest, etc. So we can't solve the problem of having excess weight by exercising more, right? We can get more muscle mass, right? We can get more fluidity in our movement, etc. We can get more strength, but we really can't exercise off the excess weight. So the definition of unsustainable is I'm already not getting enough nutrition. I'm going to make the argument for that we are not getting enough nutrition. I said this on Monday, right? Only 27% of the food in our environment is actually highly nutritious. That's pretty bad. Like, let's let that sink in. So even if we're doing a lot better than the other people around us, maybe 50% of what we're eating is actually highly nutritious foods. We are not eating anywhere near the amount of highly nutritious foods our bodies need to be really well for all these different cellular metabolism systems to function well. So then when we try to just eat less, we're in a completely unsustainable situation for our body. We're forcing our body to store excess fat. Eating less is not going to be the solution. We're defining the problem wrong. So to finally do what works for sustainable weight loss, we have to leave behind what doesn't work, right? Sustainable weight loss. Let's only do weight loss if it's sustainable. Let's quit doing all the things that actually cause our body to change our metabolism. If you look at the Biggest Loser folks who did all of this at the most intense level possible, they ate as little as possible, they exercised as much as possible, they lost weight and then they gained it back and then some. And their metabolism looks like it may be messed up forever. It may never be able to bounce back. So basically, trying to force our body is never going to be a sustainable solution. Yes. Okay, Barb, I just noticed your other comment. The definition I used is trying to eat food as close to natural state. That's a good way to talk about it. So when we stop doing the things that don't work, we can actually start doing the things that do work. One of the things I realized as I was sharing, found the answers and started sharing them with people around me, is it didn't get in. It didn't get in their heads at all because they had so much misinformation in their heads. So a lot of what I've been working on in these past years is how do I get past the information in people's heads so they can take in this really sensible, practical, this totally makes sense kind of effective approach for sustainable weight loss. So that's really what this week is about, is trying to get the terrible ideas out of your head. So there's room for the ideas that make a difference. And some people come away from this event and just change their lives. Some people say, I could really use a little more help than you gave me, but your approach sounds right. And then it's good for us to get on the phone and talk about the Slender for Good program. But here's the next message. A calorie is not a calorie, right? So I got super excited about the idea of 100-calorie right bites. Oh, good. These are the things I consider treats. These are the things I love. I want to be able to eat them, but not eat too much of them, right? So we find ourselves starting to eat some of those things that we kind of love, and it feels like it's hard to stop. So this is something I realized. Look at the difference between 100 calories of berries and 100 calories of highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances. Is our body going to do the same thing with these two foods? No, it's going to do opposite things. The highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances are going to do damage in our cellular systems. Also, our body is going to perceive we were eating, but we didn't get any nutrition. So what that triggers the body to do is make you more hungry. Keep eating. Something's wrong. with the nutrition in our environment, right? So the berries are going to feed the cells and make them healthy and give you cancer-fighting opportunities, et cetera. If we look at 8 intracellular processes, we can see why the body needs those nutritious foods in their natural state, in a more natural state, as Barb says. And it does good things with that. And when it eats these non-nutritious food-like substances, that does damage to these cellular metabolic systems, right? So our body does not do the same thing. The idea that all I have to do is manage my calories is a terrible idea. I used to have this idea, like, I don't really want to make dinner. I don't really want to eat real food. I'll just have popcorn and wine, right? As long as I keep my calories to a certain number. This is wrong. This is not how the body works. It's just wrong, right? And it leads to seriously terrible results. There's a book I found really interesting. One of my clients, her name was Elaine, recommended to me. She had heard about it. This doctor is at the University of Colorado Health Sciences Center. I used to work there myself. This is a very interesting concept. So nature wants us to eat foods that will help us store excess fat. This is one of the reasons I don't recommend weight loss diets. I also don't recommend intuitive eating. Because our body, as long as we're not getting the nutrition we need, and we live in an environment where only 27% of our food is nutritious, the nature wants us to store excess fats to be able to survive this apparent famine we're in, right? So this is an interesting book. By the way, all the books I end up loving and recommending to people, none of them end up recommending an eating approach that I find is quite effective for women in their 50s and 60s, which is a little frustrating to me. But anyway, you can get ideas that will help reinforce the ideas I'm teaching from some of these books. Nature wants us to be fat when we're in a low nutrition environment. This developed during periods of famine. One reason humans survived some of the periods of famine is we developed this ability to store excess fat for the future. When we're getting enough nutrition, what I saw with myself, I've seen with my clients, and I've seen with hundreds and hundreds of people who take this approach, is our body wants to be slender when we're getting enough nutrition, like we're healthier at a lower weight. So our body will respond to the food we're giving it. When we're eating inadequate nutrition every day, which is what I believe is happening, I believe that 27% number helps us see it, then we try to eat less. We are in a completely unsustainable situation, and our metabolism is going to change. So it's going to set us up to flip on what they call the fat switch. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but we need to eat quite differently to change the trajectory for our body to be healthy and happy and naturally slender, right? So I discovered focusing on truly nourishing your body at a much higher level can change everything, right? So people ask me, well, what is the eating approach that works? And during this event, you get 2 of the top high-level principles. Getting into exactly what does it mean for implementation, that takes me a bit longer to teach people, but it's not hard. It starts to make sense. It starts to click in your head, right? Somebody summarized, I should eat more whole foods and avoid highly processed foods, right? Anything in a package with a bunch of advertising on it about how great it is for you is probably a processed food. So those 2 are 2 of the 4 principles that make this all add up. So I've been helping people do this for about 4 or 5 years. Getting super clear and specific on the definitions is what makes all the difference. So what are the truly healthy foods? What are the highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances? We really want to see them as 2 different paths. Like the more of those I eat, the less healthy I'm going to be. The less of these I eat, the less healthy I'm going to be. So I'm really going to build this up a lot and really reduce that to closer to 0, right? That is not what we grew up learning. So how much of the highly nutritious foods do we need to eat that makes a difference? And what do we understand about why it makes a difference? I'm just going to go through a little more proof that our eating approach is really, really wrong, that we need to change it in a bigger way than we think. The reason I hit this over and over and over is at least 80% of the women who come to me who get really great results when they learned the eating approach that I learned, believed they were already eating pretty healthy. And we're just not close. We don't live in an environment that makes it very possible to understand what healthy eating is. So this is one example. So obesity went from 1 in 30 people in 1890 to 1 in 3 in the year 2000. Right? 1,000%. That's up 1,000%. Unless tell me if I'm wrong, if anybody's a mathematician. 100% would be from 1 in 30 to 2 in 30, right? 1 in 3. Now we're at 40%. No, yeah, we're at 40%, probably more, because by 2030, it's expected to be 50% of us are obese. I had passed the threshold for obese myself. I didn't really think of myself as obese, but yeah. So this correlates with these serious diseases, right? And I see it now as just an indicator of serious progressive metabolic disease. To escape these kinds of metabolic consequences, we have to step onto a whole different eating path. Our eating changed and rates of heart disease skyrocketed. So let's see, heart disease was an uncommon cause of death in the US at the beginning of the 20th century. By the middle of the century, it had become the most common cause of death. So our doctors think it's pretty normal for a lot of us to develop heart disease. A lot of us say, well, everybody in my family has it. That's because we all live in this food environment. So we start to think it's normal. And 80% of the cases of heart disease are considered preventable and driven by how we eat. These are a lot of things that when people change their eating and lose weight with truly healthy eating, what I call slender weight eating, we also tend to see big improvements in these areas, in cholesterol numbers, in blood pressure, in heart disease indicators, in diabetes, high blood sugar, prediabetes, et cetera. But I keep a list of about 100 people telling me, I asked, how did your health change when you changed your eating this way? And it's this huge list of all these different areas, like lung functions being better, blood sugar being better, blood pressure, cholesterol, being able to go off medications. A lot of people have been able to go off gastric reflux medications and medications for gastrointestinal disorders, et cetera. I was able to go off pain medications, which I had been on since high school. So it just makes our body happy when we give it what it needs. It takes a little bit of effort to learn what that means, but it isn't actually hard. I mean, one of my favorite things is when my clients tell me, this is actually easy. This is actually simple and actually easy, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. And one person in here I know is friends with one of my clients who had big success with this and has kept her success for a long time. So I know that you're seeing that this is actually enjoyable. It's actually not hard. It's an effort because it's not how people are eating. All right, so prevalence of diabetes. In 1890, that was 75 people out of 100,000, pretty low prevalence. In 2012, that was 8,000 people out of 100,000. So this is why we're seeing dialysis centers cropping up everywhere. And this is a serious disease. This causes really serious problems. So what changed? Well, you might remember the low-fat movement. This is when the US government started getting involved in advising us on what we should eat. I think this food pyramid is from then, but I'm not absolutely sure. But focusing on low-fat worked in this sense that we did actually reduce the amount of fat in our diet. I'm just looking to see if from 45% of our daily intake to 35%. That meant our food didn't taste as good. And so what did they add? They added sugar, they added flavorings, a lot of additives. So it vastly increased the amount of sugar in our diet and the amount of refined grains in our diet. Right. So this is where we really took off with obesity and heart disease and diabetes in our culture, is when we went to low fat, and that meant we did a lot more processed foods. So here's another image of what that looks like. How much sugar does a person eat in a year? When I think about sugar, I include all these added sweeteners, whether they're natural or they're lab created or, it's actually sugar. I think this is just sugar. In 1700, people were eating about 4 pounds of sugar in a year. That's probably not bad for us. Like, we feel like it's pretty good for us. We feel like, I like this. It's no big deal. But when you look at how it has increased, so by 1800, we went from 4 pounds of sugar a year to 18 pounds of sugar a year. That's a huge jump. It doesn't look like it because we've jumped to 180 pounds of sugar a year in 2012. So there is way too much sugar in our environment, and our body thinks it's good. It's fast calories. It thinks that was really good. That actually seems really good for our survival. Like, remember where that was and keep getting more of it, right? So that's where checking in with our body. What do you think? What should we eat? Sugar. Let's eat sugar. Let's eat processed stuff. Let's eat the fastest calories possible. That's our body trying to store excess fat. So this is a very dangerous environment that we live in because those things are very appealing. They taste very good, especially now that fat has been taken out of our diets. So I've been saying what we're eating is changing our hormones. So most of the people coming to me are women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And we can feel like, I guess we just have to gain weight at this age. And our doctors feel like we just have to gain weight at this age. I think that's only true because of our food environment. Like, we can't get away with it anymore, right? So we get this drop in estrogen, we get this big change in the systems in our body. If we got away with eating a low nutrition diet before, we're not getting away with it anymore. We're going to get sick and we're going to get overweight, right? So we've been undernourished most of our lives, increasingly so. And we've normalized eating more non-nutritious food-like substances than we realize or admit. And our body's saying, this is not working. I have to save you from starving to death. So what's happening to other hormones is the hormones that tell us whether we have hormones that should tell us that was enough to eat, go do something, get busy, go do something, right? That's not what's happening in this food environment. We eat, we feel like low energy. We feel like I didn't have enough to eat yet. That's because the hormones that regulate whether we feel hungry or satisfied are dysregulated. I don't know that we know at what percent, but I've heard doctors say they think over 90% of us are dysregulated in those hormones. So we feel hungry because we're not eating right. We also get a change in cortisol. And so we start getting more anxious. We get more cortisol in our system. We get more anxious. We get more sleepless. Well, this is our body being ready to search for more food. And we also get resistant to insulin in our system. So it changes our approach to the calories coming in. So we store more fat for the future and we reduce our energy expenditure. We feel low energy. Our body is trying to solve the problem of inadequate nutrition. It's telling us, keep eating, keep going, keep looking, right? And storing excess fat and making us feel slowed down, low energy. We can harmonize these hormones by giving our body what it needs to eat in many cases. So biologists talk about it like this. There's a biological switch that gets flipped when we're not getting enough nutrition. When animals live in low nutrition environments, we see the very same picture. We see storing excess fat. We see them having more cortisol in their system and being more sleepless and edgy, right? And I like the picture of bears because I lived in Colorado for a long time. And there's a time of year when they're getting ready to hibernate. You got to be careful when you're out in the woods because they are busy and they're anxious and they're hungry. Like, don't get in their way, right? I love bears. So bears have to live off the excess fat that they're putting on for months, right? While they're not eating or even drinking. The fat makes it possible for them to survive. And this looks like what's happening for humans in these times. We're getting elevated blood pressure. They get elevated blood pressure, high concentrations of triglycerides, high blood sugar, prediabetes, and a storing of excess fat, right? Their body temperature reduces. They breathe slowly. They burn excess fat very slowly. So they have energy to survive. In these situations, the fattest survive. This is what our bodies are doing. So we have flipped a switch to store excess fat. It's not a matter of now forcing the weight down by eating less. It's a matter of flipping the switch again. That's why within like a week or two of my clients eating the way that we eat with abundant, highly nutritious foods, like they say, my weight is going down, but I'm not hungry at all. Like I feel more energy. I feel more mental clarity. That's what we should be feeling. We just live in a food environment that is too messed up for us to be feeling that, right? So can you see this is not a matter of just trying harder at eating less? We are trying to force our bodies. So when you're cutting calories, you're trying to force your body to release excess weight. That's only going to work temporarily. It's not sustainable because your body's going to fight back. So before we stop today, I just want to show a little more about how Slender for Good takes a completely different approach. And that's why we get sustainable results. So I've got Lily here. Lily's like this smart, beautiful woman who always could get the weight off with exercise and with cutting calories, etc., until menopause. She says within 1 month of her first hot flash, she gained 13 pounds. And she spent the next 10 years trying to eat less and exercise more and exercise more, exhausted and not getting good results and feeling hungry. Like this is unsustainable. Does this make sense? She was really scared. Like she came to me, she's like, I just really kind of trust you. I just really think, but I'm really scared that you're going to tell me to eat more because that's going to make me gain weight. But she did. She did start eating more, and she's so glad she took the chance, right? She says, I got the whole formula. I understand what to eat more of. I understand what to eat less of. I understand how much, right? She stopped trying to starve her body into submission, and it just naturally started releasing the excess weight, reset her body so naturally to slender. And she, because she was starving herself, she's eating more than she was eating. She's thoroughly enjoying it. She's really happy. And it just keeps working, she says, like magic. Well, our bodies are kind of magic if we're giving them what they need. It's pretty amazing. You know, she was just getting ready. When she came to me, she was just getting ready to do cool sculpting. So that's where people end up pushed to. Do I just need to accept this, or do I need to start taking drugs, or do I need to start doing surgeries? And even those approaches aren't sustainable. The only thing that really gives, I believe, sustainable, healthy, happy weight loss that feels really good and is very natural and then just lasts is healthy eating, truly healthy eating. Can you tell I'm passionate about this? Lily was actually avoiding seeing friends. So it really gives us so much of our life back to just get this handled. I know how to eat healthy now. I'm happy with my weight now. These are just not issues in my life. It's worth going through those early months of figuring out, how do I do this? How do I make this fit my life? And then once it does, it makes sense. It gets easy. So the simple truth, it's not dieting, it's not eating less that resets your weight to slender in a sustainable way. It's about giving your body abundant nutrition, highly nutritious foods, a lot more than 30% of your diet, more than 50 or 60% of your diet, a lot closer to 100% of your diet. When you hear it that way, does it kind of make sense? It's definitely not what we grew up thinking. There's this 80-20 idea. I'll eat 80% healthy foods, and then on the weekends, I'll kind of splurge and have the things that I really, really enjoy. Whoever said that's good enough for our body? And personally, I got very addicted to those things and wanted more and more and more of those non-nutritious things. And that's how those are designed to work. Our food industry is getting better and better at making things as addictive as possible. We feel like we're choosing what we want to eat, but I'm not sure it's really our choice. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. So our bodies can work really, really well and be really happy and really functional. I love the picture of Colleen down there because I really saw, watching her on Facebook, I really saw her become so much more alive. I'll talk more about her. I think it's tomorrow. And she was really scared to give up the non-nutritious food-like substances, the wine, the sweet things. She was in love with them, right? And she thought this was going to be really, really hard. And it just turns out not to be really, really hard. It turns out to be really enjoyable and to make sense. So truly healthy eating gets us naturally slender and restores our health. It's wonderful. It's gorgeous. It's not scary. All right, so what can you do to bust out of the mindset that all you got to do is eat less and force your body and be miserable for a while and deprive yourself? Yeah, you want to flip the switch. You want to give your body so much nutrition that it's like, okay, I don't need to store excess fat anymore. So we don't want to eat less. We want to eat better. Way better. Way better. We want to fall in love with highly nutritious foods, right? So we can flip the fat switch off. And it's actually not difficult. It's just different. So my exercise for you today, how many people did a food journal? Kind of getting really honest and really aware of what we're eating. My exercise today is to identify 2 fruits and 2 vegetables you really like and eat them tomorrow whole, in abundance, mindfully, with gratitude. Yum, this is actually so good, right? When you step away from the highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances, your tongue, your taste buds actually kind of come back online, and nutritious foods start to taste better. So what will be the 2 fruits and vegetables? Not the healthy alternative, craving full, highly processed food-like substances we hope are healthy because we really like them, but real, whole, unequivocally nutritious foods like fruits, vegetables, proteins, fats, and whole grains. All right, so these mindset shifts build day after day, and I'm seeking to give you enough of a mindset shift that it can change your life so that you're ready. Like, one thing we know is readiness for change is a really important part of the habit change process. So I really want you to move up step after step during this week. So in order to learn what truly healthful, slanderful eating is and how it's different, there is significant unlearning. We need to talk tomorrow about how we came to find the cravingful, highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances to be so important, that it's part of the deranged food environment we live in. It's not hard to eat abundant, highly nutritious foods, but it does require clarity and intention, and it ends up being so worth the effort. Oh, you did a food journal. Oh, good. Okay, thanks. I hope you guys will come back tomorrow and I will produce these as recordings. So I'm really glad you guys came. Let me know what questions you have that you're hoping I will address. I know it's a little frustrating that I don't just give you the answers. I did try just giving the answers, but these 2 high-level answers, like if you can let them sink in, when I say unequivocally highly nutritious, see if that changes what you're seeing a little bit. And tomorrow we'll talk more about the highly processed foods, the packaging that fools us, etc. I'm so glad you guys came. All right, stay in touch with me. You're welcome. I'll see you next time. Bye.